One suspect is in custody after a law enforcement officer was stabbed in the neck at the airport in Flint, Michigan. Bishop Airport is the name of it. The suspect apparently stabbed this off-duty officer and was taken into custody. The officer said to be in critical condition after being stabbed in the neck.
Rena, we know that this stabbing is now being investigated as a possible terrorist act. Now, here's what we can confirm so far. Earlier today, an airport officer was stabbed in the neck. He's in critical condition, but the assailant was arrested by local law enforcement. So he's in custody. They're gathering evidence. The FBI is the lead investigative agency on this incident. Now, they're taking over because really any act of violence that occurs, particularly stabbings or shootings that occur inside an airport, they are first suspected to be terrorism. And then as they gather evidence, sometimes it turns out that is not the case. But right now, Rena, we can confirm that the FBI is investigating the stabbing as a possible terrorist act.
Good evening, and it's great to have you with us here on a Tuesday night, and we have several headlines breaking at this hour. First, the terror attack in a busy train station in a major capital. This time, an alleged suicide bomber and explosion, and it happened at the central train station in Brussels. Emergency evacuations followed amid fears. Did this suspect act alone? ABC's chief foreign correspondent Terry Moran with the images coming in right now.
Tonight, the city of Brussels is on edge after shots were fired and explosions rocked the main train station at about 8:30 p.m. Eyewitnesses are sharing images of flames inside the station on social media. Military police took down a suspect immediately after an explosion inside the station. Loud bangs could be heard. The suspect shot as police quickly secured the area packed with locals and tourists on a summer night.
We saw the fear in their eyes. We saw that they were running so fast and that there had to be something that made them run.
Within minutes, the station was locked down, swarmed by heavily armed military troops and police. No reports of any injuries or deaths, but Belgian officials are calling this a terrorist attack. This is Europe's third attack in just 3 days. Sunday night, a white man drove his van through a crowd of Muslims leaving their late-night prayers outside a mosque in London, injuring almost a dozen people. And yesterday in Paris, when a suspect set his car on fire and rammed it into a police van, hoping to cause an explosion on the crowded Champs-Élysées.
Finnish police say they have foiled a terrorist attack targeting a church in Helsinki. The Tempeliokio Church, a popular tourist attraction in the heart of the city, built directly into a piece of stone, is less than a kilometre from the Finnish parliament and supposedly was a planned target for terrorists. The Finnish Security Intelligence Service has made an assessment that the threat of terrorism has increased. A 2015 assessment indicated a high risk of a single terror attack, and we have now elevated the general threat level. This means that we are now very well prepared. Helsinki police sent several units to patrol near the so-called Rock Church to try to apprehend a suspect in the area, although it remains unclear whether any arrests were made.
The number of terrorist attacks across Western Europe linked to the so-called Islamic State group are on the rise. The UK, France and Belgium appear to be the countries most targeted by IS detachments or solo operatives. All three are actively involved in the anti-Daesh coalition in both Syria and Iraq. The US is by far and away the largest contributor, though France is second in terms of military strikes and third in the number of resources, with naval, air and ground forces deployed. Britain is also active, with special forces in situ. Belgium contributes a vessel and aircraft, but as the symbolic capital of Europe, Brussels is vulnerable. Since 2014, Daesh has been under the coalition Koch. Its caliphate straddling Iraq and Syria has been eroded, and now the endgame is in sight, with Mosul close to capitulation and Raqqa under assault. The jihadists are exporting their doctrine and bloody carnage across Europe to attack liberal values and behaviour. Many foreign fighters have fled the coalition assaults and returned to their countries of origin to continue the fight at home. The International Institute for the Study of Radicalisation estimates around 700 French, 500 British and 250 Belgians are radicalised and ready to wage jihad. In the hands of murderers, everyday objects become killing machines almost impossible for the security services to predict and defend against. The targets tend to be soft and symbolic, the Champs-Élysées, Borough Market, Westminster Bridge, transport hubs. The idea to destabilise and divide, to sow hatred, distrust and retaliation.
Aqid's mission is to supply the Syrian Democratic Forces' most advanced positions inside Raqqa. He drives around the city in this homemade armored vehicle. The streets are deserted. The whole city is mine.
Food, water, everything they need, I carry everything. And even sometimes, if there are wounded comrades, I will go back to look for them.
Today, he delivers food to this sniper position in the Romania district with his comrade. Around 20 fighters hold this unfinished building.
We are at the front. From here it is controlled by the Islamic State group. We control the whole neighborhood to this line.
Everyone rushes to their combat station. Takushin, along with 3 other shooters, fires back towards a building where they have spotted enemy snipers.
You see those buildings down there, where there is a residence? They're in the 3rd building.
The Islamic State position is simply too far for these machine guns, so the fighters have called in an airstrike.
Moments later, the coalition bombs the designated target.
On Wednesday, Russia announced that a meeting planned to take place in St. Petersburg between Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov and U.S. Undersecretary of State Tom Shannon has been canceled. The announcement comes after the U.S. revealed it was expanding sanctions against Russian individuals and legal entities in a bid to force the end of the Russian occupation of Crimea. 2 Russian government officials were among 38 individuals and entities added to a list of sanctions targets whose assets will be frozen and who will be forbidden from doing business with U.S. citizens and companies. A statement from the Russian Foreign Ministry blamed the decision on sanctions for impeding the dialogue and accused Washington of neglecting to offer specifics, labeling the U.S. desire to seek common ground as being unconvincing and threatening that there will be a response, including practical retaliatory measures.
The Pentagon is hoping to develop a laser-equipped drone to shoot down ballistic missiles. The U.S. Missile Defense Agency is currently seeking proposals to build a high-altitude, long-endurance unmanned aircraft capable of flying upwards of 63,000 feet and carrying a laser to shoot down ballistic missiles as they arc upwards towards the sky. Ballistic missiles are very tough to shoot down. While the U.S. has built defenses that can intercept a ballistic missile at the mid-course and terminal phase, it currently has no defense for the boost or launch phase, when the missile is slowest and easiest to hit. According to the solicitation on the Federal Business Opportunities website, the laser-toting aerial vehicles should be able to fly for at least 36 hours and transit 1,900 miles. The MDA hopes to field this technology by 2023.
The Philippines Army continues its push to drive ISIL militants out of the southern city of Marawi by bombing the terrorists' fortified positions.
Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has apologized to residents of Marawi for declaring martial law in Mindanao. On Tuesday, June 20, Duterte said Maute militants left him no choice but to impose military rule. During his visit to an evacuation center in Iligan City, Duterte said, quote, "I have to drive them out, but I am very sorry." That same day, Philippine aircraft and troops renewed their fight against Maute militants in an attempt to end the fighting before the weekend's Eid al-Fitr festival. The festival marks the end of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. Security forces have attempted to drive the militants from Marawi's commercial district towards the edge of the city. The Philippine military said 257 militants, 62 soldiers, and 26 civilians have been killed during the conflict.
For the first time in several weeks, U.S. spy satellites have detected activity at North Korea's Punggye-ri nuclear test site in the northeast of the country. Two U.S. officials tell CNN that North Korea appears to be making some modifications around the tunnel entrances. They added it's not clear if the activities indicate a sixth nuclear test is imminent, but some have expressed concern Pyongyang could conduct a test on Wednesday ahead of a visit to Washington by top Chinese diplomats. The White House says Washington is closely working with Beijing to put more pressure on North Korea, adding that there have been some positive developments.
Outrage is growing in the U.S. over the death of Otto Warmbier. And with so much uncertainty over the circumstances of his death, the U.S. is now considering banning its citizens from traveling to North Korea. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer said Tuesday the State Department may be mulling additional advisories regarding travel to the reclusive state. The State Department has said it holds North Korea responsible for Warmbier's death. And according to a senior department official, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has been considering such a restriction since late April, when an American teacher, Tony Kim, was detained in Pyongyang. Currently, the U.S. government strongly warns its citizens against visiting North Korea, but doesn't prohibit it. As a result, over 1,000 Americans a year are believed to travel to the north, getting there mostly on group tours via China. Now, a number of travel agencies, including the one that took Warmbier there, China-based Young Pioneer Tours, have announced they won't take any more Americans. Warmbier died Monday at his home in Ohio, only days after being released from the regime in a coma. He had been sentenced to 15 years of hard labor and was detained in North Korea for some 17 months. And there are still 3 Americans detained in the north.
Iran has called on Saudi Arabia to immediately release the 3 Iranian fishermen who have been arrested by the kingdom's Coast Guard. The Interior Ministry says the 3 Iranian fishing boats departed from the southern Bushehr port in the Persian Gulf last week, but wandered into Saudi waters due to tumultuous sea conditions. One of the vessels has managed to return, but the other 2 were pushed into Saudi waters and came under fire from the Saudi Coast Guard. 1 fisherman was killed and 3 were detained. Tehran has urged Riyadh to live up to its legal obligation of returning the fishermen and paying compensation. Tehran says such unintentional trespassing by non-military boats is common and has occurred in Iran's territorial waters by Iran's neighbors 17 times over the past months.
He's just 31 years old and he's now slated to rule Saudi Arabia. In a royal shakeup, Prince Mohammed bin Salman has been anointed to succeed his father, King Salman, when the 81-year-old passes away. The royal decree was announced early Wednesday morning on Saudi state television.
King Salman has issued royal decrees relieving His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Nayef from his position as Crown Prince, and appointing His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman as Crown Prince and Deputy Prime Minister.
Under Saudi tradition, the throne is passed from brother to brother and not father to son. In 2015, King Salman already skipped over a prince in setting up his succession. Now, by stripping his 57-year-old nephew of his title, King Salman has shaken things up again in what some are calling a political earthquake. Mohammed bin Salman's youth may have played a decisive role in the decision, for more than half of the Saudi population is under 25. Already powerful as Deputy Crown Prince, the change will give the young heir an even freer hand. He wants to semi-privatize the Saudi oil industry, and he's also been influential in pushing for the war in Yemen and a blockade in Qatar.
A court in Myanmar has sentenced a self-proclaimed exorcist to death for killing 2 toddlers and a baby. Tun Nine beat the children to death in a purported exorcism ritual in a village outside Yangon last year after he told their parents the children's bodies were possessed by evil spirits. The police reports said the children's bodies showed signs of being kicked, punched, and stomped on. Witnesses to a separate child beating alerted authorities, and they arrested Tun Nine for the crimes. He pleaded guilty last November, saying he lost control of his mind. On June 20th, the court sentenced Tun Nine to death for the killings and 7 years for the separate beating. Death sentences are technically legal in Myanmar, but none have been carried out in decades. The Southeast Asia Globe said Tun Nine's capital sentence will likely be commuted to long-term in prison.
As early as next week, you won't need to pick a gender to apply for a Washington, D.C. driver's license. The state following in Oregon's footsteps, we actually told you about that last week, and will soon include a not specified option on DMV applications. This means instead of an M or an F on a state-issued ID, there would be an option for an X.
A viral video captured a woman repeatedly demand her son see a, quote, white doctor at a clinic in Mississauga, Canada. A bystander recorded the woman's tirade on June 18th.
I would like to see a white doctor. You're telling me there's not one white doctor in this whole entire building.
Clinic staffers repeatedly told her they couldn't accommodate her and insisted she go to a hospital instead.
Oh my God, what type of horrible country do I live in? I don't know. My kid is sick, so I want to see somebody else that doesn't have brown teeth that speaks English then.
The woman continued demanding her son see a white doctor who speaks English for over 4 minutes. One bystander eventually confronted the woman.
Your child clearly has more issues with you being his mother than him needing to see a doctor. You are extremely rude and racist.
From your favorite restaurant to your front door.
And it smells so good.
This high-tech robot could one day replace your delivery guy.
With these robots, we can actually provide these services to people, give them actual affordable access to the goods that they want and need.
To do that, these marble robots travel on San Francisco's sidewalks. But now one lawmaker wants to hit the brakes, banning robots altogether because of safety concerns and a lack of regulations.
Then you start asking questions like, what if there's like 5 of them, 10 of them coming down the street? Let's make sure that the sidewalks are safe for people.
The city already blocks bikes and skateboards on sidewalks. Alice Chu and Pai Ra work for an organization that advocates for seniors and the disabled. They worry these delivery bots will create more problems.
We don't have enough room as it is. And why make it more complex?
I'm thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do when I encounter one of them?
We're teaching the robot's learning, and we're learning from the people around us.
Harrison Shi is Marble's head of product and operations. He says their robots use technology similar to self-driving cars, relying on at least 4 cameras and advanced sensors to perceive the world around them.
So it has 16 scans that it's doing, this specific model, and it's collecting millions of data points a second, and so it can tell the distance to everything around it.
The robots are constantly mapping city sidewalks to optimize their routes, and for now, take a human chaperone along on their trips. Robot delivery companies are popping up around the country, from Arkansas to Washington, D.C. Several other states, including Idaho and Virginia, have passed laws welcoming the technology. Wisconsin is considering similar legislation. But the fight over their future could come down to the local level.
Yellowstone National Park has been hit by a swarm of earthquakes, but the region's supervolcano is still slumbering. More than 450 earthquakes have been recorded in the area since June 12th. The most recent was a magnitude 3 that hit June 19th, around 9 miles northeast of West Yellowstone, Montana. The highest magnitude quake, measured 4.5. It struck Yellowstone National Park June 15th, and it marked the strongest trembler in the region since 2014. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, most of the quakes ranged in magnitude from 0 to 1. The University of Utah, part of the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory, says seismic activity near volcanoes can signal an eruption is about to take place. But the USGS says earthquake swarms in Yellowstone are common. The organization currently lists the Yellowstone volcano alert level at normal. A spokesperson for the agency told Newsweek the current seismic activity is, quote, slowly winding down.
The mudslide came roaring downhill on Tuesday, ripping down trees, burying homes, and killing at least 11 people in the Guatemalan city of San Pedro Sula. Officials say 10 of those killed were in a bus that was buried. The other fatality was inside a home. 9 people were injured. Emergency workers are still searching for survivors, although they say they're still not sure how many people are missing. Rescuer Walter Gomez says they've evacuated some 350 people. He says the area is still at risk. The death toll from the rainy season that started in May now stands at 18.
Severe weather, the first full day of summer here.
And it is a hot one out there for so many. They've had triple-digit temperatures for an entire week in the Southwest. And as you can see there, people are trying to find relief anywhere in any way they can.
And this, of course, as the Gulf Coast braces for Tropical Storm Cindy, and you're looking live at rough waters in New Orleans this morning. There are actually urgent warnings this morning about heavy rain that could cause life-threatening flash floods. We want everyone to take this seriously.
Overnight, Tropical Storm Cindy moving in and dumping heavy rain along the Gulf Coast. Flooding concerns prompting the governor of Alabama to declare a state of emergency. In Gwinnett County, Georgia, this family had to be rescued after their home was overtaken by floodwaters. The downpour and waterspouts leaving Florida beaches deserted. In New Orleans, along Bourbon Street, people ducking into bars to escape the rain. And miles off the Louisiana coast, it's blowing bad out here. Oil companies quick to get workers off those rigs. The big fear, flooding. People racing to protect homes. Workers building a levee 4.5 feet tall and more than a mile long.
It is a serious event that's not only going to bring us rain and wind, but it's going to bring us water.
After Hurricane Katrina, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers spent $14.5 billion on one of the world's most remarkable hurricane protection systems to encircle New Orleans. The largest flood control structure is nicknamed the Great Wall of St. Bernard Parish. It's a 1.8-mile-long barrier. Some of the steel support piles extend 200 feet underground. In addition, there are new state-of-the-art pump stations so powerful combined could fill the Superdome with water in less than 90 seconds.
We saw that terrible incident on a plane that was heading to Houston yesterday, traveling through that tropical storm zone. More than a dozen people were injured by severe turbulence.
That frightening flight ending with more than a dozen passengers injured after their plane hit the edge of that storm.
These are some of the 14 injured. Passengers wearing neck braces, placed on stretchers, seated in wheelchairs and lifted into ambulances after their United Airlines jet hit turbulence Tuesday afternoon.
It was like lot of turbulence. The plane started to move very violent. Many people they jumped to the ceiling of the plane.
Carlos Padron walked away from the plane with this gash in his head.
Many people were crying.
They were scared?
Yeah.
The flight was on its way from Panama City, Panama to Houston, Texas, passing Cancun, Mexico, which was on the edge of a tropical storm. That storm creating the turbulence that sent passengers bumping around the cabin.
Everybody was scared to death that the airplane was going to go down.
Phoenix is no stranger to heat, but the sweltering temperatures have gotten so bad that it's making it tough for some people to leave. Phoenix's airport canceled dozens of flights because it was just too hot. Temperatures hit 118 degrees, exceeding the maximum heat threshold for some smaller planes. Higher temperatures make for thinner air, which is harder to generate lift from. Without the denser air pushing it upward, a plane's engines need to do more work to get it to takeoff speed. Phoenix's summer temperatures are usually between 105 and 110 degrees, but this week they're closing in on 120 degrees, though they're not expected to break the all-time record of 122 degrees. Phoenix is just one area suffering under a record heat wave. Other western U.S. cities like Sacramento and San Francisco have seen record high temperatures this week.